Close your curtains. Lock your doors.
Tommy, it's me!
Dim your lights.
Hurry!
Prepare, if you dare, for a walk on the dark side.
You wanna play?
Okay.
I've been burned, I've been bruised, I've been sent to the hospital.
I saw somebody dead and I started hyperventilating and freaked out and started crying.
Welcome to the creeped out world of Scream Queens. A special edition True Hollywood story.
There's a tradition here of great women warriors. They don't scream and give up. She's a survivor. I mean, she has that instinct. It's not a monster, it's just a doggy.
Thank God I've never really been chased by demons from hell. But I imagine it's not going to be a good hair day.
Go in there, girl. He's over there. He's gonna get you.
When he was choking me with the phone cord. Keep making sounds. As long as you're making a sound, you're alive.
I took blood bottles and just started squirting everybody.
And then they showed me the Chucky doll.
So I said, why not?
This is the story of hacks, slash, and flash.
Hey, pipe down, Golden Throat. I'm telling this story. Oh, hello, darlings. It's me, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, your horror honey who's in it for the money. And have I got a treat for you? I'm going to turn you on to some of my girlfriends. They're real screamers. So, chain yourself to the couch and turn up the sound real loud. This is a story of Scream Queens. The True Hollywood story.
The dream of the immortal, from life's ambition was to be a star.
Whenever we cover the public scandal.
They run. They hide. They die. But most of all, they scream.
A woman screaming is one of the most terrifying things that you can think of.
The female scream becomes this kind of cultural icon, cultural shorthand almost, to represent fear.
Yeah, and take it from me. Guys love screamers.
You see a woman screaming, oh, she's under threat probably from a monster.
Or in my case, a horny producer.
You're in the middle of shooting a scene also, and, it's terrifying. You say cut, and your heart is still pounding.
That hook was real that we used. It's this sharp silver hook, and it would cut you all the time if you weren't careful. And you're running, and there's this man with his hook, and you know the situation. You're watching someone get beat up. It was terrifying.
I will never, ever, ever again watch a horror film and say, oh, right, like that's acting, they're running around a room screaming. I have to say, it is much harder. I have so much more respect. And I would run up and hug and kiss somebody that was in a horror film and say, you are God. You worked really, really hard, because now I know how hard it is.
So what defines a Scream Queen?
A gal with a great set of tonsils?
Because we were the screamers, the horror actresses, they started calling us the Scream Queens.
The Scream Queen is the good-looking young woman who spends most of the movie running away, stopping, screaming, and then running away some more. And also at one point saying, "Why are you doing this to me?"
They're always trying to catch up. They're like, oh my God, what's happening to my friends? Or why are these things happening? Or there's an evil force in this house.
Well, the chick, she's really hot, she's really young, she's really stupid, she's probably having sex with her boyfriend or doing drugs. Some guy comes up behind her and, chops her up with an axe.
They were always so, beautiful somehow. Even though they were distorting their faces and, getting bloody and dirty and nasty.
They scream, and they're always very sexy. And they're always wearing low-cut things and big bosoms and little things, and they're always victims.
beginning in the 70s, that started to change a lot, and women became much stronger. John Carpenter's women, certainly James Cameron's, you know, very physically toned, machine gun toting women were very much their own women.
Women, for better or for worse, for reality or fantasy, have become much more aggressive and physical about their reaction to things.
You now see more of these women solving the crimes, or getting revenge, getting the last word in against the killers, figuring things out.
We're not all virgins anymore, and we have an intelligence about us that makes us even more a part of fighting. We're still terrified, we're still haunted, we're still running, you know. You've got to have that, otherwise it's not the genre.
That one theme of the woman in peril goes all the way back in film history, and it was incorporated into horror at a very early stage.
In fact, the woman in peril dated all the way back to silent movies.
Even though you couldn't hear actresses scream, we did have prototype scream queens, and probably the most famous was Mary Philbin, who starred opposite Lon Chaney in the original Phantom of the Opera in 1925. That scene where she comes up behind him as he's playing the organ and rips the mask off his face. And it was one of the great shock moments of all time.
In 1931, Universal Pictures broke the silence with the release of Dracula, the first horror talkie. Moviegoers could see and hear a woman in peril.
It was a rather historical moment because the whole possibility of screams on screen.
The female scream gives us our cue as audience members. This is now when we're supposed to be afraid.
Theater owners quickly realized the power of a well-placed shriek.
They would hire women to scream and faint during screenings. Sometimes they would rent an ambulance that would sit outside the movie theater at the curb so that when spectators came into the movie theater, they'd see that this was somehow dangerous to your health. And then a woman would scream and faint in the movie theater. She'd be carried off, and she'd be loaded into an ambulance that would then, you know, sirens blaring, tear her away from the curb.
Movies like Frankenstein and The Mummy soon followed. Then, in 1933, a little lady with a big voice amped up the fear factor.
Although the term Scream Queen was not yet invented in the 1930s, there is one actress who obviously fits the description. Her name is Fay Wray.
Fay Wray appeared in chillers like The Vampire Bat, Dr. X, and The Mystery of the Wax Museum. But a date with a giant gorilla lifted her career to new heights.
Fay Wray is perfect in that film. She has that vulnerability, yet also the strength of character. She's the only person in that film who understands what Kong's going through. The men just want to kill him.
However, it was Ray's pipes that really stole the show.
Long sections of King Kong are nothing but screams.
She screamed her way through the entire film. So Scream Queen, as far as I know, came about as a kind of reflection of this heroine who was supposedly in a state of fear throughout an entire film, and Fay Wray was a significant icon of that in the 1930s.
By the mid-30s, the Screamers took on bigger roles.
We started getting our first female monsters. One was Elsa Lanchester as the Bride of Frankenstein.
Bride of Frankenstein was the introduction of a somewhat unconventional monstrous figure in the form of a woman. She's a monster, but she's also a screaming woman.
In 1935, we also had the first female vampire, who was played by an actress named Carol Borland in MGM's Mark of the Vampire.
The following year, 1936, Universal Pictures took a bite out of the same vein.
Rather regal actress named Gloria Holden played Dracula's daughter as a kind of tormented lesbian.
And she was a really compelling figure, a very kind of seductive, mysterious figure who has pretty eclectic taste in victims. Whereas Dracula was primarily interested in female victims, his daughter is also primarily interested in female victims.
During the early 1940s, horror films became a popular diversion from the sobering reality of World War II. And one actress turned panic into a fine art.
Evelyn Ankers, who played opposite Lon Chaney in the original Wolfman, and she was also in Ghost of Frankenstein, and she was in The Mad Ghoul, and many others, was virtuosic in her screaming, and she could come up with a scream for almost any kind of occasion.
In 1945, World War II ended. Rosie the Riveter returned to the kitchen, and Scream Queens became eye candy again.
You had the decorative ingenue, who basically did a lot of reacting to bigger and bigger atomic mutations, and the screaming was important. A tight sweater was important. A lot of things other than acting were important.
You did have a lot of women in the 50s who were the assistant to the scientist. And so when the scientist would go into the dangerous area, he would have his loyal female assistant.
However, in 1954, Julie Adams turned the tables, playing Brainy K. Lawrence in Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Creature was one step away from just the victim, because she was a scientist. She was an ichthyologist. So I got to have some of those long speeches about, the fish and the thorn and so forth. And so I think that it was one move away from just the pure victim, just the beautiful limp lady being carried away by the monster.
The creature is awkward, clumsy, he has big pits on his face, and he's ugly and he's unpopular. Okay? And he's in love with the beautiful girl. Can't you see why adolescent boys would identify with this guy, Plus the adolescent boys lived in the Black Lagoon of their room, where they couldn't leave, just like the creature. And so all boys had a thing for Julie Adams.
Creature from the Black Lagoon made Adams a bona fide scream queen. But it wasn't her voice that got pulses pounding.
One of the sexiest scenes ever done in a horror science fiction movie of the period. Nothing much really happens. It's all very suggestive. Julie Adams takes a swim. She jumps off the boat and is swimming in the river and is unaware that the creature is swimming underneath her and around her and is mirroring her movements and almost seems like it's making love to her underwater.
We were certainly aware that there was, a sex appeal, but we really didn't know, I don't think, the sort of erotic undertone that scene had and that would have that effect on the audience.
Coming up, Scream Queens hit the showers.
And then, of course, the horror and the surprise.
Horror and surprise, two of my favorite things. And later...
Oh, look, there's a monster and I'm so frightened. Let me take my top off.
In the 30s, 40s, and 50s, Scream Queens were sucked by Dracula, pawed by the Wolfman, and carried away by a lechy lagoon lizard. But in 1960, a nerdy mama's boy became a girl's worst nightmare.
By 1960, the public had really, I think, had its fill of all of the 1950s cliches, the atomic monsters, the alien invaders, all of the things that they had seen 100 times before.
Legendary director Alfred Hitchcock agreed. The master of suspense scored big with films like Rear Window and North by Northwest. But in 1960, Hitchcock redefined the word fear.
Psycho remains a benchmark in horror films.
Hitchcock chose striking 32-year-old A-lister Janet Leigh for the lead.
I heard about Psycho one afternoon. I received a note from Mr. Hitchcock, and said, "Dear Janet, please consider the role." I called MCA and I said, "Of course, I'll do it. I want to work with this man."
In late November 1959, cameras rolled on Psycho. Janet Leigh was the biggest name in a cast that included Anthony Perkins and Vera Miles. Leigh played Marion Crane.
It's her story, the audience thinks.
Marion is a secretary who impulsively steals a bundle of cash from her boss, then hits the road. But Marion's trip is cut short at the desolate Bates Motel, where she meets the owner, a strange character named Norman.
You're all involved with this lady and her love affair. And now they think it's going to be a menage a trois. Which one is she going to go with? And then, of course, the horror.
Janet Leigh, who we think is going to be the heroine who's going to be sustained throughout the movie, suddenly ends up getting killed very, very early in the movie. That was really, really unprecedented at the time.
We lost Janet Leigh about less than halfway into the film. That was just shocking. So from that point forward, everything about Psycho turned the horror genre on its ear.
Psycho opened in June 1960. True to form, Hitch came up with a clever tactic to hype his masterpiece.
You wouldn't be allowed to enter the movie theaters after the movie started screening. If you think about Psycho, it was very important that spectators actually saw the film from the beginning, because things happened very early on in that movie that were quite unconventional.
Psycho broke box office records. The film also won a slew of Oscar nominations, including Best Director and Best Supporting Actress.
It just wasn't the type of picture that people get nominated for. I remember I was in the kitchen and I picked it up and Janet, you've just been nominated for an Academy Award. It was such a shock. I mean, I really was surprised.
Neither Leigh nor Hitchcock won an Oscar. Still, the success of Psycho reinvigorated the horror genre.
The early 60s also provided opportunities for a lot of Hollywood royalty who we hadn't seen much in recent years, people like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, for instance, to make smashing comebacks in pictures like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane depicted a psychological profile of sadism, torture, and murder. 54-year-old Bette Davis and 58-year-old Joan Crawford were cast as aging sisters and one-time Hollywood stars. Their warped relationship shocked moviegoers. So did the grotesque appearance of the former screen sirens.
In an effort, perhaps, to just continue acting, that they also began to parody their own roles and began to take on parts that were, sinister, witch-like.
For certain audiences, they're only known as these really hideous creatures with way too much makeup.
The on-camera animosity between the two hags played by Davis and Crawford seemed to mirror their real-life rivalry. In February 1963, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane received 5 Oscar nominations, including a Best Actress nod for Davis. Crawford was overlooked, but the snub didn't stop Crawford from upstaging her co-star on the night of the award show.
She arranged to be the designated acceptor for Anne Bancroft, who was up for The Miracle Worker and who in fact won. And so Joan Crawford was able to accept the Oscar that Bette Davis didn't get.
Davis and Crawford never worked together again. However, both actresses continued making frightful fare like Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte, Strait Jacket, and The Nanny. But not all 60s scream queens were portrayed as demented old ladies. In 1968, Roman Polanski gave birth to Rosemary's Baby.
Mia Farrow, who was just perfectly cast as this innocent, waif-like, almost childlike, innocent, almost Virgin Mary type of mother. And then, of course, the ultimate horror, finding out that, it's the spawn of Satan.
There are some theories that this sort of monstrous motherhood that gets represented in the film is some kind of reaction to women's liberation movement that was already, happening in the 1960s. There's some who say that it's somehow linked to, civil unrest in the 1960s, that somehow this monstrosity just gets manifested in this woman's body.
The film's finale unnerved audiences.
She is both a victim and an accomplice at the end of the film. She has been victimized, but she also, at the end, recognizes this baby as her baby. And so she then becomes complicit in this devil worshipping and in, releasing the devil's child into the world.
It has been
been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
In late 1968, another bone-chilling film emerged from the dark and changed the face of horror forever.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Night of the Living Dead was a very controversial film when it first came out.
It was about confused roles.
Mass hysteria. What do they think? We're imagining all this? Shut up!
I think that may be the first horror film where the hero was a black man.
It was considered really extreme. All of the imagery of cannibal zombies munching on human entrails, little girls chewing off their father's arm, was a lot for some audiences.
Really a departure in the history of horror, because suddenly everyone was getting murdered, and really brutally, and really in low-budget terms.
I was much more concerned when we made the first Night of the Living Dead about the story of revolution and a new society swallowing the old.
Are they slow-moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
It's basically a story about revolution.
But there was nothing revolutionary about director George Romero's treatment of female victims.
In the great horror tradition, they were just objects. They were always there to be carried off and rescued. And I guess when we did Night of the Living Dead, I fell into that trap.
Romero faced some tough critics.
The film was already in the can and edited, and it hadn't been distributed yet, but I'd shown it a few times to friends and so forth, including this new girlfriend that I had who I really wanted to impress. And she looked at the movie and she said, gee, it's a pretty scary movie, but, you know, the women are full of shit. So it was like... And I said, oops. For that, and whenever I do appearances, I keep saying, sorry, ladies.
Don't go away, because when we come back, I've got a story that's going to make your head spin.
I was the little girl that wanted to be Cinderella that was made into this horrible, horrible creature.
Scream Queens were swinging with a rat pack of psychos, zombies, and the chairman of the board, Satan. And some of them wore a bit too much makeup. So much for peace, love, and the natural look. But by the 70s, Scream Queens were ready to raise a little hell of their own.
The early 70s were really just the beginning of a watershed in American culture. Everything had gone sour in Vietnam. It was the time of the women's liberation movement. It was very threatening to a lot of men, but it also, after a while, you started to wake up and say, wait a minute, they're right, you know, we've been depicting women as these defenseless creatures, and that's really kind of a passive-aggressive way of saying they're weak.
In 1972, Wes Craven released The Last House on the Left. Craven's directorial debut was a gruesome and sadistic thriller about two teenage girls who come to a very bad end.
You have the kind of innocent child with her friend who was much more from sort of the rural area and with a much tougher, worldly-wise girl. And so in Last House, it was kind of those two kind of women going out to a rock concert, kind of the modern pilgrimage. And, you know, they both get killed. In a very horrible way.
The bad guys, escaped convicts pushed to the brink of madness by a thug named Krug.
The sort of male figure who is just completely macho. It was kind of like the Stone Age man that was on his way out in the 70s, but still needed to be challenged.
However, the violence was over the top.
It showed straight on hardcore violence that in a film that you know, horror films never were that blatant before. I think about the way they showed things.
People demanded their money back, and they threw things at the screen, and they ran out of the theater.
1 year later, filmgoers ran out of theaters again, but for a very different reason.
In 1973, probably two of the greatest horror roles of all time for women came along in the same movie, and the movie was The Exorcist.
The Exorcist was based on William Peter Blatty's best-selling novel. The story showed a mother's fight to save her daughter from demonic possession. In spring 1972, Blatty and director William Friedkin began casting. Hundreds of young hopefuls auditioned for the role of Regan McNeil. One 13-year-old actress turned heads. Her name, Linda Blair.
She projected the stability and the wholesomeness and the optimism and the normalcy that we wanted for this girl.
I was the little girl that wanted to be Cinderella that was made into this horrible, horrible creature.
A creature with a tormented mother. 39-year-old Ellen Burstyn landed the part.
Her pain, her performance is so strong. You would never believe my performance if it wasn't for Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen Burstyn is very powerful, very strong, trying her best for her daughter, but eventually going to have to leave it to the boys. You know, it's going to have to be the two priests who come in and do the job.
On December 26, 1973, The Exorcist hit theaters and scared the devil out of audiences.
People were fainting in the aisles and throwing up.
They were either watching it 20 times in a row, or they were fleeing the theater or getting sick in the theater.
Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn both received Oscar nominations. Neither went home a winner. Still, The Exorcist took the reputation of scream queens to a whole new level.
There are a couple of key things there. First of all, you had, again, a real innocent, a young girl playing this victim and saying the most unimaginably obscene things.
The shock value lies in the fact that it's a 12-year-old girl. And in the first half hour of the movie, she's so innocent and sweet, and she wants a pony.
From out of this child comes this very powerful, evil female voice. You know, it's a very powerful image and concept. It's much more frightening to be frightened by innocence. It's something that comes out and says, I'm evil from the very beginning.
The Exorcist whetted America's appetite for graphic horror. But 1 year later, in 1974, another gruesome film made moviegoers lose their lunch.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most preeminent, powerful films made in America in this century.
It was just, you know, one of the first, what we might call splatter films. That it was an incredibly violent, low-budget movie where there was just, you know, the female scream was literally almost from the first frame to the end of the film.
In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we start getting a glimmer of something that's going to be more and more important in later horror films, the idea of the last girl standing.
The gritty shocker follows 5 teenagers who stumble upon a family of redneck cannibals. Only one victim survives, leading lady Marilyn Burns.
Marilyn Burns in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the all-time greatest screamers.
I was in love with her. I mean, she was so beautiful and so voluptuous, and but you know, pretty much of the screamer type victim, where she just reacted and ran.
Actually, in the making of that movie, she was really beat up. She was beat with a stick, and she had to run through bramble bushes, and she skinned her knees several times, and she broke things, and she had bruises, and she was very, very physically assaulted just by the process of making that movie.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre hit theaters in October 1974. The film's violence and grisly content left audiences aghast. So did Marilyn Burns' agonizing struggle to stay alive.
It's just brutal, awful. I mean, it makes you want to throw up after you watch it the first time, I think, because you can't imagine that this is happening to this poor girl.
She looked strong and powerful, and yet she was, you know, facing this horrendous, you know, Leatherface. So I think the interesting thing about her performance was that she was able to sustain that incredible level of terror.
It really just caught on with audiences because, yeah, I mean, she was good in that role. I mean, you really believed that she was in peril.
You just love rooting for her all through the movie. She's terrified. Her face shows terror, her body shows terror, and yet she keeps doing the physical thing to get away.
I don't think anybody had ever seen that happen to a woman in a film before.
But in Chainsaw Massacre, you still have the girl as victim. She doesn't stand up to the monster.
However, Marilyn's ordeal was a step in the right direction.
The change was on its way, and soon we started seeing women standing up to the thing that was terrifying them.
Coming up, you've got a date for the prom. Oh, and don't forget the pig's blood.
She slept with the blood on her because she didn't want to shower every night and have them do it over again.
By the mid-70s, Scream Queens weren't taking nothing from nobody. These girls were tough, talented, and telekinetic.
Carrie is one of the best horror films of all time because we think it's about this poor, abused outcast, and oh, we feel so bad for Carrie, and then of course she really turns the table.
Carrie the movie was based on Carrie the novel by Stephen King. The story revolves around a repressed high school senior with psychic powers. The lonely teenager is teased mercilessly at school, until one day, she snaps.
She killed everyone and all that, but it felt like good revenge, because what they did to her was just horrible.
In 1975, director Brian De Palma signed on to bring Carrie to life. De Palma began searching for the perfect actress to play the lead. Art director Jack Fisk suggested his wife, 26-year-old Sissy Spacek.
He kept saying, "You're going to test my wife." And Brian would go, yeah. They finally did, and then obviously it was, she gave the best screen test.
John Travolta and Nancy Allen joined P.J. Soles as Carrie's tormentors. 25-year-old Soles played 12th grade prankster Norma.
They wanted to see every new face in town. I was one of them. I had my overalls on and my red baseball hat, and I walked in, and Brian De Palma looked at me and he goes, "I'm putting her on my list."
Shooting began on March 1st, 1976. Sissy Spacek immersed herself in the role of the painfully shy outsider.
Every day she was so concentrated and just stayed kind of separate from us.
Carrie suffers at the hands of Norma and company. Yet her final humiliation plays out in front of the whole school. Carrie is crowned prom queen, but it's a cruel setup.
When they did the scene where the blood gets dumped on her head, she actually had a trailer brought to the back of the sound stage because it was going to be 3 days of filming with her with the blood on her, and she slept with the blood on her because she didn't want to shower every night and have them do it over again.
In the film's climax, Carrie changes from hapless victim into telekinetic terror.
She's staying there with the blood streaming down her face, and her prom dress is ruined, and it's over.
Shooting the sequence wasn't easy. P.J. Soles' death by fire hose was particularly rough.
I turned my head, and it went full force in my ear and completely broke my eardrum. And I passed out, and the grips carried me to my dressing room, and I had to go to the doctor. So what you see on there is me actually passing out, and they kept that clip.
Carrie triumphed at the box office in November 1976. Spacek's performance landed her an Academy Award nomination. In 1978, John Carpenter's Halloween introduced audiences to 19-year-old Jamie Lee Curtis. Curtis played babysitter Laurie Strode, who is stalked by a homicidal maniac named Michael Myers.
The lead character is a very intelligent girl who is very complicated, and a lot of screen time is given to the reality of the situation, so that when this unreal part of the story comes in, you buy it.
She's not the dumb bimbo girl. She's still a cute girl, and she's in high school, but she's smart, and so she gets away. And I think what people like about this film is that it's so damn scary.
Curtis was born a scream queen. Her mother was Psycho star Janet Leigh. Still, Jamie Lee worried about her big screen debut.
The first day on the set, I thought I sucked and was convinced I would be fired. I remember being at home that night, and my roommate said, "John Carpenter's on the phone," and I literally thought that was it, I was going to be fired, and picked up the phone, and he actually called to say, and it's never happened again in my entire career, he called to say how happy he was with the first day's work.
P.J. Soles played Laurie's best friend Linda. Souls relished her role as the sexy bad girl.
In Halloween, I get to be the cool chick because Jamie is the babysitter, and you know she's boring and she has bad clothes. And I was the one with the boyfriend. I was the one that already knew how to make out and do all that stuff and drink beer.
Linda's zest for life is snuffed out at the hands of Michael Myers.
I never liked in movies when people die really quickly, so I just wanted to extend it. So I remember, when he was choking the phone cord, just keep making sounds. As long as you're making a sound, you're alive.
Staying alive was not a problem for clean-cut babysitter Laurie Strode.
Jamie Lee Curtis was great in Halloween because we thought we had another kind of submissive victim, and then of course we found out, how empowered she could become.
The virgin, the one who has not given up her body. So there's this kind of moralistic element to it. That the girl who has the power to kill the monster is the one who is pure at heart. It's almost like a fairy tale, isn't it?
Hardly. Still, Halloween quickly became the highest-grossing independent film of its day when it opened on October 25th, 1978. Audiences could barely contain themselves.
John was very specific about saying that if you're vulnerable enough as a character, that in fact people will talk back to the screen.
It's one of those movies where you want to scream at the screen and be like, right there. You can't.
And sure enough, there was a woman in Hollywood who, when I left the house to go across the street, stood up and screamed, "Don't go in there, girl! He's over there! Go get you!" It was so clear that it was exactly what he said it was going to be.
In 1979, Scream Queens rocketed into deep space with Ridley Scott's Alien. 28-year-old actress Sigourney Weaver starred as the resourceful Ellen Ripley in this chilling tale about a crew of astronauts who pick up a deadly stowaway.
What most people remember is Sigourney Weaver. There is the protagonist who really kicks butt. She takes charge, she knows what she's doing.
Sigourney Weaver was the ultimate kick-ass woman in outer space.
She just was, like an ordinary person who's put in this extraordinary circumstance, and no one else is going to help her. We've all been in situations like that where, even though we don't know what we're doing, we're going to have to keep going, put one foot in front of the other.
She outwits the monster. She doesn't, kick the out of it and walk away. She outwits it. And that's the woman's solution. Intelligence, not a bigger gun.
Coming up, rock, paper, machete.
Mrs. Voorhees, of course, is also a crazy bitch, which helps. I mean, you really hate her.
After the break.
This is something that a woman could do. A woman could be just as brutal as a man. A woman could be just as vengeful and vindictive and psycho.
I chase her a lot. She hides from me a lot.
We got into it, man. We truly, truly got into it.
And later.
Everything falls apart. And then it's total adventure. Zombies, 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 gore, gore, gore.
Stay tuned.
Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. If I made you feel second best, girl, I'm sorry I was blind, but you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
Bridget Jones is back.
You do have a gorgeous bottom.
Thank you. I'm actually with the Mexican ambassador. And you're on speakerphone.
Oh.
Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason.
I have missed you, Jones.
Rated R. Opens November 12th.
For years, the Honda Odyssey has been considered the best vehicle in its class. So, what did we do? We went back to the drawing board and enhanced its safety features with side curtain airbags for all 3 rows. We made it more functional and quieter than ever before. Introducing the all-new Honda Odyssey. A great idea made better.
Want oversized lashes? New XXL Volume and Length Mascara by Maybelline New York. 2 steps of microfiber lengthens to the max, builds mega thickness for over-the-top gorgeous lashes. New XXL.
This portion of E brought to you by Maybelline New York. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline.
I'd like to talk to you about a serious condition. Triskaidekaphobia. Even if you're like me and you can't say it right, you or someone you love may suffer from a fear of the number 13. But you can do something about it. When the 13th day of the month falls on a Friday, do what I do. Stay in bed.
We can sit here and talk about subtext and, what this character represents and the psyche of the audience, whatever. But really, people go into these movies that scared out of them once every 7 minutes. Now, for me, Friday the 13th, it was once every 3 minutes. The first time I saw that movie, I was a little pool of sweat at the end of it.
In fact, Friday the 13th made a lot of people sweat. The story begins at tranquil Crystal Lake, where a group of young counselors arrive to reopen a cursed camp. Chaos ensues, and by the end of the movie, all but one of the teenagers is dead. Adrienne King played the virginal heroine, Alice.
As soon as I saw that in the script, it was like, how lucky can you get? I mean, I'm not going to be dying. I'm not going to be the wimp. I'm going to end up taking care of business.
Adrienne seemed destined for the role. Director Sean Cunningham wanted an actress who combined innocence and agility.
I was the girl next door, and that's what he was looking for. And also, he told me I had an extensive dance background, and he was looking for someone who really could move and really could be very athletic and very strong.
The machete-wielding monster in Friday the 13th isn't a deformed cannibal, an escaped lunatic, or even a man. She is an overprotective mother. 54-year-old Betsy Palmer played murderous matriarch Pamela Voorhees.
Her child drowned at 7 years of age in Crystal Lake because 2 young people went off and made love instead of watching the children.
This is like some poor woman who lost her son to these people that didn't give a rat's ass about him, and she's come back and she's going to take revenge on them.
That's the whole justification for why the lady has lost it. She just went ape.
Palmer co-starred in the 1955 melodrama Queen Bee with legendary scream queens Joan Crawford and Fay Wray. But Betsy didn't set out to be a screamer.
I was on Broadway at the time, doing the same time next year. My agent had called and said, how would you like to do a movie? And I said, great, I haven't done a movie since the 60s. I said, in California? He said, no, it's going to be done here on the East Coast in New Jersey, and 10 days work, and they'll pay you $1,000 a day. I said, perfect.
Palmer's agent then described the film.
I said, no, I can't do a horror film. But I said, well, look, send me the script. So he did. I read it, and I said, what a piece of junk. And I said, nobody's going to see this. This will come, it will go. So I said to him, fine, I'll do it.
Shooting began in mid-September 1979. For Palmer and King, bringing the action to life was intense.
I chase her a lot. She hides from me a lot.
We got into it, man. We truly, truly got into it.
Adrienne and I were getting ready to do the scene, and this was a scene where I was supposed to slap her. I said, well, let's rehearse this because they're going to shoot this next. So we start to do the scene, and I haul off, and I hit her.
She slaps me and the whole thing, and I was not ready for it, and it was 3 a.m., and I guess I started crying or something.
She falls to the ground, and she says, Sean, she hit me.
Director Sean Cunningham quickly settled the score.
He said, Betsy, we don't hit people. We don't hit people in films. We miss them. And he said, and then we just put a sound effect in. I said, oh.
Adrienne and Betsy's final scene together was a gory girl-on-girl showdown.
I actually called the last scene on the beach the ballet of the machete. It's true.
This is something that a woman could do. A woman could be just as brutal as a man. A woman could be just as vengeful and vindictive and psycho.
Yeah, I'm vicious in that thing. Well, that's the other side of Betsy Palmer.
It was choreographed, but we totally took it upon ourselves to deviate, you know, and half of that was real.
In the end, good girl Alice decapitates bad mom Pamela. Then, in a terrifying dream sequence, Alice is seen drifting on Crystal Lake in a canoe. 13-year-old Ari Lehman played Pamela's drowned son, the not-so-dead Jason Voorhees.
That's what they said. First we want you to swim and drown, and then, oh, grab this girl in the boat.
For Jason's victim, shooting the scene was scary. Seeing it, absolutely terrifying. Adrian and a special guest got their first look at an advanced screening.
I'm watching the whole film with my mom, and she's like sweating it out. So then we're at the end, and she's like, I can hear her going, oh, thank God she's safe. You know, it's like my mom's like tapping me on the knee, like, good job. And I'm just sitting there waiting. And when Jason pops up and grabs me and pulls me under, she popped out of that seat and screams. I mean, now I know where I got my scream from.
Friday the 13th premiered in May 1980.
People were like lined up around the blocks. Everyone's going, oh man, you're not going to believe this. This is just awesome.
True horror aficionados agreed.
I'm much more interested in watching women, a female monster and a female protagonist go at it than I am watching two guys fighting. Mrs. Voorhees, of course, is also a crazy bitch, which helps. I mean, you really hate her.
To me, it was just another acting role. I wasn't called a slasher. Nobody called it a slasher in those days. It has been dubbed that, and I am the queen of the slashers.
Friday the 13th made a killing at the box office. A year later, Jason returned in Friday the 13th Part 2 with a definite axe to grind.
The Jason character went to the next level from where he came out of the lake. And in this part of the beginning, he was seeking revenge over the death of the mother because he saw Mrs. Voorhees' head get wafted off at the end of the first saga.
Jason's bloodlust was too big for just one sequel. In 1982, the carnage continued with Friday the 13th Part 3. 5 victims into the film, Jason walks off wearing a hockey mask, and a film icon is born. The sinister visage quickly became the killer's trademark in a slew of sequels. Kane Hodder portrayed Jason in Friday the 13th Parts 7 through 10.
He never gets the girl, he never gets to do anything else, so his only release is to kill people violently and creatively. And, it's just ingrained in his brain, I think.
Coming up, who let the dog out?
Cujo was the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Now, not every horror flick mother is a battle axe wielding battle axe. I mean, some are just typical soccer moms who ain't afraid to break bad when something threatens their little ankle biters. Then it's look out, mama.
There must be just some inborn, natural knowledge of women about having children and protecting them.
In 1983, Stephen King's novel about a rabid St. Bernard named Cujo made it to the big screen. When the crazed canine attacks Donna Trenton and her son, this scream queen mom really goes on a tear. Dee Wallace Stone played the determined Donna.
Dee Wallace and Cujo, there's a situation where there's a woman who is trapped, yet remains strong, looks for the solution.
She's a real person kind of defending her family. And it's something that you usually see men doing, like defending their families in films against against a creature or against something, but this time you've got the mother defending her child. So, and you get to see how brutal a woman really can be.
Stone was used to taking on evil. The 34-year-old actress got plenty of practice in shock cinema classics like The Hills Have Eyes and The Howling.
I scream well, I cry well, and I die well.
But shooting Cujo took a lot out of Stone.
Not a monster, it's just a doggy.
Your body goes through the same chemical things as it does in real life. So the entire film almost is you're in fight or flight, which is what your adrenals do. So it just totally blew my adrenals.
Stone's method acting paid off.
Her kid is freaking out, and she's trying everything she can to hold it together. Like, she's on the breaking point herself, and she doesn't even think at this point that they're going to be alive, you know. And her kid just will not shut up. Wow, how could she yell at her kid like that when he's so upset and they're about to die?
I got more letters from mothers going, I so identified with that moment when you lost it with that kid and how guilty you felt.
When her son stops breathing, Donna finally takes on the Hound from Hell.
It's a breaking point for her. And she's like, it's all up to me. I'm the only one that can get us out of this. He's relying on me. So I've got to do whatever it takes to get out of here.
However, no mom comes to the rescue in Wes Craven's 1984 film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. This time, a resourceful teenager stops the killer.
There was a strong female survivor in the Nightmare film, but also, you've got a different kind of villain that comes to you in your sleep, and that idea that, that you can't escape your dreams, I think, really works for a lot of people, because some people, they're never as terrified as they are during nightmares.
On Elm Street, the nightmare becomes real, with razor-sharp claws and a wicked sense of humor to match. His name, Freddy Krueger.
And action.
Think you're so smart, huh, bitch?
Freddie is this guy who was a child molester back in the day in their neighborhood, and all the parents got together one day and they burned him because they were sick of him terrorizing their children and their families. None of the children realize that this happened, and they all grow up in this neighborhood, and all of a sudden they start having these terrible nightmares.
He is a boogeyman in the truest sense of the word, and a boogeyman is a pretty classic ingredient, especially in German literature and Teutonic literature of the horror genre. So I guess, yeah, we could say he's kind of a classic invention from Wes Craven's mind, yeah.
Ending the nightmare takes a special kind of heroine, and director Wes Craven found her.
I just wanted kind of the girl next door that would look like she would be a pushover for this, monster, but turned out to be the one person that could stand up to him. And Heather Langenkamp just had that quality in spades.
20-year-old Langenkamp played Nancy Thompson, who figures out there's only one way to outwit Freddy. Don't sleep. But Nancy can't stay awake forever.
She's the only one that's put two and two together. Nobody takes her seriously. Nobody believes that she knows what she's talking about until it's just too late and everybody's gone. And she's the only one at the end who because she's realized the situation, she's the only one at the end who has the power to confront Freddy and get rid of him.
She was smart enough to see what was really going on. She was brave enough and, living in reality enough to not listen to the lies.
She realizes, this is my dream. This is my head. And I can make the decisions about what happens here. And then it's no sweat from that point on. She realizes she can get rid of him like that.
In the end, Freddy gets away. A Nightmare on Elm Street opened in November 1984, but were audiences ready for Freddy?
I think audiences were ready for Freddy. I think that they were ready for a new kind of killer.
By the mid-'80s, the MTV generation of scream queens boasted brawn and bigger brains.
Men in horror movies are often rather brutal and simple-minded about their revenges. Women tend to be cleverer. They don't have brute force. They have to think. They have to plot. And to me, that's a much more interesting thing to watch. You can't kick monster ass if you're only 5'2".
In 1985, director George Romero brought his zombies back to life in Day of the Dead. But Romero wanted a screamer, who was much tougher and more resourceful than the women in his first two chomp fests, Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead.
And I said, goody. And he grabbed me. He grabbed me. And he ripped at me.
Actress Laurie Cardill had the right stuff.
Her dad is Chilly Billy Cardill, who was in the very original Night of the Living Dead. He used to have this TV show in Pittsburgh called Chiller Theater, and he was a great supporter of ours. And she was just this vibrant, very strong, very sort of opinionated character. And so her actual personality, I think, influenced me when I was writing the role. And she can really do this ballsy stuff.
I was afraid that doing a horror film in those days, they had a lot of scream queens, and there was a stigma, but I did because it was such an incredible part.
Laurie plays a no-nonsense scientist named Sarah, who ends up in an underground bunker with some stressed-out military officers. Above them, zombies are overrunning the world. Sarah easily holds her own against the dead and the living.
Everything falls apart. And then it's total adventure. Zombies, 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 gore, gore, gore.
Sarah bravely avoids becoming lunch and escapes being groped by the undead in one of the film's most terrifying scenes.
So you know the first effect, when the hands come through the wall. I want some of the fans to know this story. Well, my husband is one of those hands, and he was protecting my breasts so that nobody could grab them. So he's proud of that. He's a part of history, protecting my breasts.
But no sooner were the zombies laid to rest when the mother of all monsters resurfaced. In the summer of 1986, Sigourney Weaver returned to space as Ellen Ripley in Aliens. This time, Ripley was armed and dangerous, but she also showed a tender side after saving a child from the hideous creature.
And what's interesting is Ripley's maternal nature is one that emerges through the course of the film with this character, Newt. And initially, Ripley, doesn't know what to do with this young girl, doesn't know how to respond to her. But as the alien mother becomes more and more predominant, as people are getting killed, the sort of normal human mother starts to emerge in the figure of Ripley.
It's a triangle, really, right? Two potential mothers, one monstrous, one human, and this little child. The whole narrative is made fresh by that amazing touch.
In the finale, Ripley comes face to face with the ultimate celestial boogeyman.
There's been a tradition in the world and in literature of great women warriors, and there's nothing that great about them except they don't scream and give up, which most people in a crisis don't do anyway. Well, maybe I do, but Ripley doesn't.
Weaver's powerhouse performance in Aliens won her an Academy Award nomination and raised the bar for future scream queens. In fact, the Ripley effect surfaced the next year in Clive Barker's directorial debut. Hellraiser tells the story of Kirsty, a gutsy teenager who outwits a band of ghouls unleashed by her degenerate uncle.
We had a short time to cast the character of Kirsty, and I saw a lot of young ladies. We did a video thing, and we had a bunch of screaming dialogues and screaming and dialogues. Nothing, couldn't find anybody.
Then, 16-year-old actress Ashley Lawrence knocked on Barker's door.
Clive said to me, okay, your uncle is in your father's skin, and he's trying to kill you and have sex with you, probably in that order. Go.
And she read the dialogue, and it was fine. And I said, nah, we're coming to the really important here, scream for me. And it echoed down the hall. It was fun. I said, we're going to do this.
Ashley, however, wanted more than fine. She set out to make Kirsty unforgettable.
I said, I don't want to look like I'm in one of those douche commercials, all like windblown and, oh, look, there's a monster and I'm so frightened, let me take my top off.
And she was completely into it. She so much did not want to be glamorous. She kept saying to me, can I be dirty today? Can I be bloody today?
If I'm going through hell, then I needed to look like it. And I was like, I want to look lousy. He's like, all right, done. Thank God I've never really been chased by demons from hell, but I imagine it's not going to be a good hair day.
But bad hair and charming creatures like Pinhead were the least of Ashley's problems.
The only moment that she objected to was we had a maggot scene.
The maggots in Hellraiser were not in the original script. And Clive comes up to me with the maggot wrangler, because apparently maggots need wrangling. I don't know. And he puts his hand into this vat of maggots, which are covered in sawdust, so they make this sound like shh. He says, look, they don't hurt you because your flesh is still living.
She said, okay, I'll only do this if you will throw the maggots at me. And the interesting thing about this was she couldn't scream, because the whole point of the scene is that the villain is in the room with her, and she's backing through this little dark passage, and she knocks over a corpse, and it spills maggots onto her. So I said, okay, I'll do the maggot wrangling, and you'll have to trust me.
They were in my hair, they were my shirt, they were my jeans, and yeah. So I mean, Clive pretty much could get me to do anything.
In the end, maggots helped turn this Scream Queen into one of the best.
But there's very little that they can throw at me now that I can't handle. I'm kind of grateful for it.
Coming up, scream if you'd like to scream.
If you kill Drew Barrymore, you know, in the opening minutes of your movie, who knows where this movie's going to go.
'80s Scream Queens weren't just on the big screen. There was this new thing called street video, where I did some of my best work. Now Scream Queens could invade your living room or bedroom. Classic? Not exactly.
Well, one of the cheapest types of movies to make is a horror film, because basically you can do it in one house, you can do it on one location, and you can do it with no name actors, because horror is one of the genres where you don't really need stars. And so there were a lot of horror films that came out that were extremely low budget that were made for the video market.
Skimpy budgets were only part of the story. Flicks targeted to the rental market upped the ante on shock value. More gore and plenty of skin.
When video had its rise in the mid-'80s, they needed something that would attract the audience's attention. Nudity was one of them. So they would always incorporate toplessness, shower scenes, things like that in the films.
Brinke Stevens used her assets to become a popular B-movie Scream Queen. But this brunette was no bimbo. In fact, Stevens had a degree in marine biology.
I thought, well, I'll just do acting as a temporary job until I can find a job in science.
All through school, I always wanted to be queen of the prom. And it never happened? Oh, what a shame.
Brinke bared all for the first time in 1982. She didn't last long on screen, but her performance was memorable.
Called Slumber Party Massacre. This was in the height of the slasher phase, so they needed a lot of pretty girls to die horribly. It was the first time that I died on film, the first time I screamed, and the first time I had to take a shower scene. This was to become a template for the rest of my career.
In 1987, Brinke's popularity boomed in the home video market, following a slew of slaughter flicks.
Some of my early movies were called Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, Bad Girls from Mars, Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bolorama.
However, being a Scream Queen sensation can be a real pain.
I've been burned, I've been bruised, I've been sent to the hospital, to the emergency room on films. It's really intense and it's very difficult physically.
The explosion of straight-to-video product continued to flood the rental market. But by the early 90s, the major studios hit back with big-budget theatrical releases. And big bucks meant A-list actresses like Kathy Bates and Jodie Foster. the scream queens were suddenly silenced.
I think the reason that horror films disappeared for a while in the 90s, after Misery and after Silence of the Lambs, you know, they had brought the level, the bar had been raised so high because these were such high-quality works, and we had seen so many Friday the 13th and so many Halloweens, and people, I think, were getting a little tired of the fact that we thought the monster had been killed, but we knew he was really going to return.
I think people got sick of horror for a little while, to be honest. I think people felt like it was played out and that there wasn't anything new that could be brought. So I think it was a combination of, yeah, it's true, there wasn't a lot going on with it. And people also didn't believe that there could be anything going on with it.
Then, in 1996, fledgling screenwriter Kevin Williamson gave new life to the low-budget, high-concept horror film. Williamson called his brainchild Scary Movie, and writing the script became a labor of love. Kevin drew inspiration from John Carpenter's 1978 horror classic, Halloween.
That was the movie that got it all started for me. When Jamie Lee Curtis was running, I was running. It made me want to tell those kind of stories and put people on that roller coaster.
However, Williamson was determined to take audiences on a different ride, one that combined terror with laughs. Director Wes Craven loved the concept.
It's so unusual. It's not really a horror film. It's not, I don't think of it as a spoof at all. It is a very dark and ironic look at kids who are sort of steeped in horror films and a series of murders that begin to plague them that are based on similar events in horror films.
21-year-old Drew Barrymore also joined the party.
I read the script and I just thought this movie is really fun. It was completely in the vein and the genre of the scary movies that I loved growing up.
Miramax co-founders Bob and Harvey Weinstein eyed Barrymore for the lead role of Sidney Prescott, a teenage girl stalked by a sadistic killer. But this was no ordinary creep. He quizzes his victims on horror movie trivia before cutting them up. Drew wasn't psyched about playing the heroine, but she did suggest another plan to Bob Weinstein. He then called Wes Craven.
He said, Drew's decided she just wants to do the first character, but I think it's a good idea.
The first character is Casey Becker, and Casey gets killed off after just 12 minutes on screen.
And I thought it was a terrible idea. I thought, oh man, there goes the film. Called up Drew and talked to him. She says, I think it's going to be really good. I think you're going to get the same impact, and they're going to be really shocked when I die.
Craven warmed to the idea, but losing the film's only bona fide big screen star made casting a challenge.
What Bob did is that he took actual stars from television. We couldn't afford, film stars, but he was smart enough to realize that television was a huge audience.
Courtney Cox of Friends was cast as nosy news reporter Gail Weathers. 23-year-old Neve Campbell landed the lead role of Sidney Prescott. Campbell was also best known for work in TV's Party of Five.
Neve Campbell's character was a girl next door, and some people would think she was a geek or whatever, but she was really the one that had the strength to face the worst things and succeed and come out alive.
Filming began in April 1996. During the shoot, the title changed from Scary Movie to one that said it all, Scream. By the end of the grueling 55-day production, Campbell was seeing red.
Last day of shooting, I'd been so sick of having blood all over me for about the last 3 months that I started, when they called rap and everyone started applauding, I took blood bottles and just started squirting everybody and to put it all over my hands and went like this on Wes's face so I got everybody back.
Scream opened in theaters on December 20th, 1996. As expected, the Hitchcock twist electrified audiences.
Scream did kind of a thing that a little takeoff on Psycho by having Drew Barrymore, who we think, okay, that's a big star, and we see her at the beginning of the movie, and we think, okay, she's going to get away here, and of course she doesn't.
Nobody's safe. If you kill Drew Barrymore, in the opening minutes of your movie, who knows where this movie is going to go.
The film is both hilarious and scary, which is great. It was really nice to have that quality. So if you're screaming, you're too terrified, you're going to be laughing in the next 2 seconds for some morbid reason.
Coming up, the Bride from Hell is a chip off the old block.
So I said, why not? And that was sort of the beginning of the end of my career.
Scream brought the horror flick back from the grave and introduced a new crop of scream queens to the land of the living. Which is good, because the dead just don't go to the movies.
I just think teens are so savvy and they're so smart. The trick is not to think of them as teens and just think of them as an audience and think of them, you know, everyone wants to see stories that they can relate to and that they can respond to.
In 1997, Kevin Williamson scripted another thriller targeted to teens. Different story, same formula. I Know What You Did Last Summer featured TV stars Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Hewitt and Gellar play friends who panic after an accident on a remote mountain road.
They're having a little too much fun, and they end up hitting a man and trying to make a decision on whether they're going to go to the police and tell them that they've hit this guy, or whether they're just going to sort of leave him for dead.
Instead, the teenagers dump the victim into the ocean.
Their decision comes back to torture her a year later, and a year later when you see her, she is completely different. She now, like a girl that used to have tons of life to her, has none left.
Soon, notes arrive. They all say the same thing. I know what you did last summer. Then, a stranger in a black slicker shows up with a menacing hook in his hand.
I Know What You Did Last Summer borrowed a lot of the trailing success of Scream. But Jennifer Love Hewitt, sort of in the Neve Campbell role, I think I would call it.
Through the movie and this murderer sort of running around chasing her and torturing her, basically she gains strength and becomes the person that she was before.
For Hewitt and Gellar, the film's frightening premise cut a little too close to home.
I never watched horror films before because they scared me, and so doing this movie was sort of like, it was a chance for me to face my biggest fear. And during the movie, there was a scene where I saw somebody dead, and I started hyperventilating and freaked out and started crying. And so a lot of the things in the movie for me, a lot of the really scary stuff has been real.
It's really terrifying. I think what I've always said, and as I'm becoming more of an expert on horror and thrillers, the things that scare us most, what terrifies us most, is what could actually happen.
While a fresh crop of scream queens were sliced and diced, a veteran screamer returned to the fold. 39-year-old Jamie Lee Curtis thought the time was right to resurrect Halloween.
I actually called up John Carpenter, and we got together and talked about the idea that we should kind of come back and find out where Laurie Strode is 20 years later.
Halloween first hit theaters in 1978. Jamie played the terrorized babysitter in that film and in the 1981 sequel, Halloween 2. But Curtis wanted no part of 4 other sequels.
I wouldn't be in Halloween 7. There would be absolutely nothing, not a penny you could pay me. You could have come to me and offered me unbelievable amounts of money, and I would have said no. And the only reason we're doing this is because we're honoring the first movie. We're doing it 20 years later, and it has to be new. It has to be absolutely back to the first 2 movies and has nothing to do with the sequels because, you know, they're not good movies.
In Halloween H2O, teenage scream queen Laurie Strode is all grown up and totally stressed out.
The memories come back every day, and the fact that this man was still out there means that you're paranoid. You can't, you know, even no matter how happy things happen for you, you may get married, you may go to college, you may have a child, you may get a good job, whatever it is, you're never happy.
On the 20th anniversary of the Halloween that ruined Laurie's life, Michael Myers returns.
Jamie Lee Curtis was like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Dead. And that's definitely a change from her character in the previous films. When you do see her stab him and then walk away and then stab him again or stick something in his head, and she wants to just get out. She doesn't want to kill him. She doesn't even know who he is at that point. She just wants to leave. But in H2O, she wants him dead.
That same year, 1998, another fiend made an encore. Chucky first showed up a decade earlier in Child's Play as a serial killer whose soul becomes trapped in the body of a doll. But after 2 sequels, the series ran out of steam. Creator Don Mancini decided Chucky needed to settle down and find a wife. Jennifer Tilly was offered the part.
When they called up and they wanted me to do Bride of Chucky, I didn't want to do it initially because I always thought that a horror movie was something you did in the beginning of your career when you didn't have a lot of options, or at the end of your career like Betty Davis and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Jennifer had plenty of options. In fact, her career showed great promise. In 1995, Tilly received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress in Woody Allen's Bullets Over Broadway. Bride of Chucky was hardly Oscar material. Still, Jennifer signed on.
They sent me the script, and I thought the script was pretty funny. And then they said Ronnie Yu was directing it, and I was a big fan of the Hong Kong genre of film. And then they showed me the Chucky doll, and so I said, why not? And that was sort of the beginning of the end of my career.
Tilly played the murderous vixen, Tiffany.
Tiffany is the girlfriend of Chucky before Chucky became a doll. And Tiffany has never found anybody that excites her the way that Chucky did when they were a couple. So when Bride of Chucky starts, Tiffany is still pining after Chucky. And she wants to turn Chucky the doll into the hunky boy next door. She wants to put his soul into the boy next door so they can continue their sort of Bonnie and Clyde life that they lived before he turned into a doll.
Come here.
However, Jennifer found working with her pint-sized leading man anything but child's play.
When you work with the dolls, it's like working with children or dogs, because if the doll, you could be brilliant if the doll is looking at your bosoms instead of your eyes. Then they have to reshoot it because they'll say, the doll doesn't look like it's looking at Jennifer.
Predictably, Tiffany's plan goes haywire. Meanwhile, Chucky creates a few sparks of his own.
Stop it. My favorite scene is the scene where I'm in the bathtub and I'm watching Bride of Frankenstein, because that's where Don Mancini got the idea to do Bride of Chucky. And there's a scene at the end where the Bride of Frankenstein says, "We belong dead," and she's crying, and then they cut to me in the bathtub and I'm crying, real tears, being the fabulous actress that I am. And just at that moment of utter poignance, Chucky throws the television set in the bathtub and electrocutes me.
Chucky then transports Tiffany's soul into another doll. The two deranged playmates go on a murderous rampage. Jennifer had a blast during production.
Rosie, she plays the character Charlotte in the movie. She's actually a real spider. And the key to handling a spider is you don't make any sudden moves. Because if she bites you, you probably won't die, but it's not a guarantee.
Bride of Chucky opened in theaters in October 1998. The film surprised everyone.
Don Mancini, who created the Chucky movies, he was convinced the reason the movie was so successful is because I was in it in all my fleshly glory.
Coming up, if it worked once, it'll work again. And again. And again.
A lot of big Hollywood companies are doing remakes of old classic films.
Don't touch that knob. We'll be right back.
It's a new millennium, and once again, the Scream Queen is hot, hot, hot. Seems like every great actress in Hollywood wants to give her lungs a workout. That's why I keep mine in tip-top shape.
You were a Scream Queen in a drive-in type movie in the 70s or even the early 80s. It was going to be really tough to make that leap to respectable actress. Now we see respectable actresses who have already established their careers doing horror movies.
And they don't get much more respectable than Nicole Kidman. In 2001, Kidman played a widowed mother of 2 children in The Others. As the story unfolds, unseen forces threaten to destroy the family and take over their creepy Victorian mansion.
When I read the script, I was shocked at the ending. And that's, a lot of times you'll have a movie that's really good for the first 2/3, and then they don't know how to wrap it up. And with this film, I think the ending is so strong that that was one of the reasons I really wanted to do it.
We're in a period where horror is very popular, plus we're in a period where a lot of big Hollywood companies are doing remakes of old classic B horror films.
Carrie certainly qualified as a classic, and in 2002 the cult favorite was remade for television. The new version starred 27-year-old Angela Bettis as telekinetic misfit Carrie White.
I tried to take nothing from Sissy Spacek. I did not actually see a need for it to be remade. And it kind of came up, and I thought, you know, no, it's kind of been done very well. But then as it kind of kept coming up, I started having these feelings of, like, just this loyalty I have to Stephen King, and, like, this need to uphold his story, and, like, I couldn't just trust, like, any old Hollywood chick to, like, to pull it off.
Angela knew that shooting the famous prom scene would be tough, but tough didn't begin to describe the ordeal the actress went through.
This blood we were using is this insanely sticky stuff. Like, it took us 2 weeks to shoot that thing, the pig's blood scene. So I have this drenched dress, but it's that sticky, like, you guys know it? It's that corn syrup, like, sticky, gross stuff.
However, filmmakers wanted to go beyond gross, or redoing vintage Hollywood.
Japanese horror films, 99.9% of American audiences haven't seen them, so they've got good material. Why not take well-known actresses and put them in the roles and remake them?
Ringu, a big hit in Japan, became The Ring with Naomi Watts in the lead. Naomi first screened in the direct-to-video Children of the Corn 4. Watts later went on to make a name for herself in more serious films like Dangerous Beauty and Mulholland Drive. Naomi didn't spend much time on Ringu.
I watched the film that one time and I never went back to it. And if you start, like, you know, looking at something that you're going to remake, then you might get attached to it and feel that you owe it to that film to do something else or to replicate it, and so, you know, it's a bad trap to fall into.
Watts put her own spin onto the role of a journalist determined to stop the bizarre deaths linked to an eerie videotape.
She's almost like the one in the film who's gonna save everybody, and he wants to make everything better for everybody. But when she finds out, you know, at the end, she finds out, oh, she really screwed up. You know, maybe her saving everybody was a little too quick and didn't have enough forethought.
In 2003, 21-year-old Jessica Biel joined the ranks of the Scream Queens. Jessica appeared in the remake of Tobe Hooper's macabre masterpiece, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Biel plays the last woman standing after a night of terror at the hands of some backwoods psychos.
She's a survivor. I mean, she has that instinct, that will to survive, and that's also very important because it kind of gets her through the events that happen to them.
Jessica knew what die-hard Chainsaw fans expected.
I was worried about what the cult fans were going to say, the followers who have, you know, when they first saw that movie, then saw it thousands of times and, you know it word for word and shot for shot. It's nerve-wracking to do something like that. You just want to do a good job, and you want those fans to love it more than anybody else.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre created quite a buzz with a $28 million opening weekend. Still, reviews were mixed.
A lot of people thought the new version wasn't nearly as scary as the original. I liked it, but I mean, I think it was just an attempt, okay, we have better special effects now, we have more sophisticated things we can do with camera work, let's see if we can make an even better version of it.
Director Zack Snyder set out to do just that, with George Romero's 1978 zombie classic, Dawn of the Dead. Sarah Polley plays a young nurse who seeks refuge from an army of flesh-eating ghouls in a shopping mall.
So I loved the idea of doing a remake of Dawn of the Dead. I just thought it was a really cool idea, and I've always really loved the original. I thought it was this really great commentary on consumerism, sort of disguised as a zombie movie.
Polley related to her character in other ways.
She's a nurse, she's hardworking, she has a good relationship with her husband. So she's just a regular girl who sort of ends up surviving, and I think sort of discovers her will to survive and her ability to survive as the movie goes on.
Dawn of the Dead more than met studio expectations when it opened in March 2004. Remakes are big and about to get colossal. King Kong returns to the big screen in December 2005. Naomi Watts will recreate the role played by the original Scream Queen, Fay Wray.
I think as long as people keep coming up with interesting twists on the genre, you'll see A-list actresses trying to get those roles.
Playing cards,
Every year, horror hounds gather at conferences all over the world to come face to face with their beloved scream queens.
The conventions helped a lot with our popularity into becoming cult heroines.
So I only did Halloween and Carrie, so I don't know, but they're just such huge successes that keep going on and on. And the fans are they just really, really love those movies, and they love the characters. You know, I've gone to a few conventions, and these people, they line up, they've got pictures, they want pictures, they just say, I love watching those movies.
I love fans. They know, especially at the horror conventions, they know everything. They know all the stories. They get pictures that I've never seen before. And they're hugely, hugely loyal and appreciative of your work, and they kind of honor you in a nice way.
It's interesting to me because I've been doing this for 13 years, acting, and I've done it every sort of venue, you know, drama, comedy, theater, and nobody has ever been as excited about me as the horror community has.
I didn't even know my name was Pamela Voorhees until all these people you know who are fans tell me these things.
They're true blue fans. They're like hardcore. They don't mess around. And if they love you forever.
Horror enthusiasts just can't let go, since fiction is a lot more fun than fact.
And I was pushing my cart this one night, 11 o'clock at night, and I hear behind me, and I thought, I'm just going to ignore this, you know. Then I turned around, and he said, I knew it. He said, I knew it was you. Same thing is true. Kids on the street, from across the street, would call out, Mommy, Mommy, kill her, Mommy, kill her. They love it. It's a trip.
If they don't say, Jennifer Tilly, aren't you Jennifer Tilly? They say, are you Bride of Chucky? That's the movie that everybody knows me from. When I go to London, Mexico, Greece, everywhere I go, they know, you know, in France, I'm la fiancée de Chucky.
The horror genre continues to be box office gold as fans lust after the next good scare. And the ladies who drive the action and the soundtrack are lining up to let it rip as the next generation of scream queens.
Horror, scary movies, that stuff will never go away. Because it's one of the primal emotions that we all have. We're all born afraid.
Horror movies have always been there. They've never gone away. They've always been made. And I think they're getting more intelligent.
There will always be a role for women in it, I think, because so much of the horror formulas come out of primal feelings about sex and sexuality and desire and fear and tensions between men and women, which are probably going to go on forever and ever. And so I guess we'll scary entertainment.
Now, who is it that said, behind every great monster, there's a gal with a great set of lungs? Oh, yeah, me. Oh, Scream Queens have come all the way from damsels in distress to brainy ballbusters, and it only took 75 years. But one thing's for sure, as long as movie makers keep coming up with new ways to terrify their leading ladies, Scream Queens will keep singing our favorite song. Hit it, gals!
Your channel is stuck on E.
I don't go to horror movies at all. I find them too horrible. I screamed over and over again for 45 minutes.
I'm a big chicken. No, I don't like horror films.
Until we got the perfect scream.
I've fought off demons from hell. I'm good.
I'm surprised nobody called the police.
It will not die. Friday the 13th will not die. I always thought of horror films, the types that you think of as horror films, as being sort of like cheap porn violence.
Holy, I've got a rabid dog on the top of me.
It's like The Exorcist or Poltergeist or The Shining or is it Poltergeist or Poltergeist?
I couldn't break out of B movies now if I wanted to. It's all I've got on my resume.
You mispronouncing a word on E. True Hollywood story.
Okay, come on. Bite her in the ass. Let's get over with it.
I'm Chucky, and you're watching E! Entertainment Television.